Hi, everyone. Welcome to Novel at Home. Let everybody get in and get situated. Thanks for joining us from your living rooms or offices or cars or wherever you are with your Zoom. We appreciate everyone taking time to log in. We all spend our days on screens now, so it means a lot that you take that extra time in your evenings to spend with us to talk about books. And we are super thrilled that we have three amazing ladies with us tonight to get in the mood for cozy mysteries this fall. Tonight we have got with us Edith Maxwell / Maddie Day. And she is, her latest that we're talking about tonight will be Candy's Slain Murder, if you can see that, not well. And that is in the Country Store Mysteries. And she also has the Cozy Capers book group mysteries. And writing as Edith Maxwell, she has the Historical Quaker Midwife mysteries and short crime fiction. And she is actually coming to us, north of Boston, you said, up in the corner of Massachusetts by New Hampshire, where they have real fall weather now and frost.
Yeah.
And we've also got Kelly Oliver, who's a little closer to us here in Nashville. And she has got 3 mystery series. She writes the Jessica James mystery thrillers. And for kids, she has the middle grade Cassie O'Rourke Pet Detective Mysteries. And then tonight we'll be talking about her Fiona Figg mysteries. And the latest is Betrayal at Ravenswick. And then we have Deborah Goldstein, Judge Deborah H. Goldstein, who has the Sarah Blair Mystery Series. And we were fortunate enough to host her in our store at Novel for the last one. And so this time I'm grateful for the pivot to virtual so we could host you again. And her latest in that series is 3 Treats Too Many. And I have a question before we get started. I saw mention of cats in several bios, and then I know that we've got a sassy cat in this series. Do you all have cats? And if so, what are their names and what kind of cats are they?
I do not have a cat. I do not have a pet. My husband is the only animal in the house.
Fair enough. That's plenty, right?
My Country Store Mysteries have a cat named Birdie, and he's on every cover. And he is directly modeled on my late cat Birdie, who died a few years ago. But we have a new Energizer kitten named Ganesh that we got in July. He's 6 months old now.
Oh, wow.
And he's getting very big. I post a daily kitten picture on Facebook. And he's getting very big, but he's still very kittenish and is absolutely manic when he's manic. And when he's not, he sleeps so sweetly on my lap. But it's like, he bit me today, so 2 hours ago. Like,
right, that's a true cat owner right there.
I have 3 cats. Probably one of them will be walking across the screen at any minute. If I try to let them in the room, they just claw on the door. So I don't really have any choice but to let them in. So we have Mischief, Mayhem, and Flan.
Oh,
Great
precious.
name.
Okay, well,
Flan, but
the way this will kind of go is in a moment, I'll hide my screen and get out of the way so these ladies can talk. But if everyone wants to take a look at the bottom or top of your screen, you will see a chat box, and the chat box you can use for just general comments and shout outs and all of that. And then next to that, you'll see Q&A. And if you've got direct questions you want to ask the ladies, you can put that in the Q&A box. And then they'll be taking a look at that towards the end. And then I'll come on at the very end to wrap up. But with that, I'll let you guys take it away. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Nicole. We're delighted to all be here. I'm going to sort of be our moderator to some extent. And I think I want to start right from what Nicole started. All of us write, as she was saying, different books that appear on different parts of the shelves. Both of you have books that appear for historical and for cozy. I have had traditional, and the series now is definitely put on cozy, but it's considered cozy with a little edge. Tell me, give me a quick definition of the genre and how you fit into it. And then we'll talk about our worlds and how they're the same or different. Kelly?
Sure. Well, the Jessica James mysteries are more suspense, and they cross over between mystery and suspense. So some of them are a little more mystery heavy where you don't know who done it. And so you're genuinely trying to figure out who is the culprit. And then some of them tend more towards suspense where you have a pretty good idea who done it, but I guess it's a little more thrillery where you don't know when he's going to get caught or she's going to get caught or how the crime is going to resolve itself. And then the Fiona Figg mysteries, the one that Nicole held up, the Betrayal at Ravenswick, that's historical cozy, or kind of, I guess, cross between traditional, historical, traditional, and cozy, maybe a little bit more on the traditional mystery side. It's very much inspired by an Agatha Christie kind of not quite closed house mystery. And then I've got the kids mystery series that are all right, mysteries, but for middle grade kids. So
yeah, so I write 2 cozy series, contemporary cozy series as Maddie Day, and you know, they're amateur sleuth, village based. Justice is restored to the village in the end. They have recipes in them. The Cozy Capers book group mysteries take place on Cape Cod. This is the first book with a bicycle shop mechanic, bike shop owner, and a mystery book group that only reads cozy mysteries. And I love the cozy genre where you know you're not going to feel worse about the world at the end. Like, the world is scary and messy enough out there, especially right now, and especially this year. And I write books where you're not going to feel worse about life when you're done with the book. And then my historical series, written as Edith Maxwell, Taken Too Soon is the newest book, with Quaker midwife Rose Carroll in the late 1800s. And they're traditional, historical. They're also, town-based amateur sleuth. They can be a little darker than a cozy. In the late 1800s, babies died in childbirth. I won't murder a baby, but the facts of life were difficult at times, and I don't stand back from writing about those.
As you can see, when we talk about our cozies, we're all talking about an amateur sleuth. We have different settings, but they're confined, whether it's a small Cape Cod town, or like in my case, I've created a small southern town, Wheaton, Alabama. We have casts of characters. We have a protagonist and we have side characters. In mine, I started out not to kind of going against the tradition. The tradition says there shall be a cook, there shall be recipes, there shall be a cat. Well, when I started, the first book, as you can see, has a cat, Rara, who is the alpha male of this book. But I'm not good on recipes. And when I was writing this, I wanted to write these, but I couldn't write what I know. So in my case, I don't do cooking. I don't do crafts. I'm lousy at all those things. So I thought about it and I created a protagonist that would be more like me, because I figured there had to be readers out there who also hated or were lousy at this thing. But what about you guys? Because I'm going to tell you about my recipes in a few minutes, but tell me about you. Is the protagonist something you know, or is it something you've had to reinvent the other way?
Well, I love cooking, and I'm an avid gardener. And so the recipes, the cooking is not a stretch at all for me, but I've never owned a restaurant. I've never even worked in a restaurant, and I've certainly never owned a bike shop. I was immersed in the childbirth world a couple decades ago, so I know that world of pregnancy, labor, childbirth, breastfeeding, and I assisted at and observed a number of home births. I wasn't a midwife, but I taught childbirth classes and was a doula. So, so it's a mix for me, Deborah. Like, part of it is stuff I know, and part of it is stuff I want to know. So I get to immerse myself in the life of like a kind of sort of a small town diner, and ask my adult sons for bicycle and bike shop knowledge, and I go visit bike shops.
Kelly?
Well, in the Fiona Fig mystery series, I don't know, personality-wise, maybe Fiona is kind of smart mouth and quick, but she is nothing like me. She's a file clerk, and she lives in, well, the setting, she's like in her 20s in 1917. It's World War I. She's eating things like toad in the hole that I'd really never heard of before starting the research for this novel, or treacle pudding. I had to look up what is treacle pudding, and of course learned that all English desserts are called puddings, no matter if they're cake or pie. So I have done a lot of research to create the time period of the character. I suppose that I can't help but infuse her with some of my own personality, but I've had to learn about, she works in the War Office, so I've done a lot of research on the War Office. Turns out she ends up being a spy. And I guess when I was a kid, growing up, I wanted to be a spy when I was growing up, and would walk around at recess by myself, talking into my shoe like "Get smart." That was, people thought it was kind of weird, but yeah, I was a weird kid. So maybe I'm just actualizing this fantasy. I mean, in my real life, I'm a philosophy professor, and in some ways, being a philosopher is kind of a lot like being a detective. And instead of looking for clues to who done it, I'm looking for clues to the meaning of life or something like that. So. But growing up, I wanted to be a spy or a detective. So I guess that fantasy I'm living out through these novels.
Well, I think I'm running the other way. As she mentioned, I was a judge until I gave that up to follow my passion to write. But unlike Edith, who I've seen some of her beautiful concoctions, I have to do research to find the kitchen. In 3 Treats Too Many, I had to go research motorcycles. I had a shadow of veterinarian. But to be perfectly honest, for all 3 of the books in the series so far, I had to go out and shadow restaurateurs and cooks. One of my favorites was one of my dear friends took me through her freezers and different things. And as we walked through this one thing that looked like a room, and there's food on either side, and it's very cold, and we came out the other side, she said, "Do you know what that was?" And she said, "That's called a walk-through freezer." That's why my books have things like Jell-O in a can as the recipes. I'm not going to be as apt as you are, Edith.
Okay.
How about your research and your such beyond the recipes?
Research. Well, of course, the historical, as Kelly said, needs a lot of research. Everyday life, carriages, speech, how did people brush their teeth in 1890? How did they get around? What did women do with menstruation, with labor, with all of that? There was early forms of formula, but it wasn't very reliable because sometimes it was cut with chalk. And so lots and lots of historical research. But I've also had fun, popping into the bike shop on Cape Cod, near the cottage I rent for solo riding retreats, and grilling the mechanic about his practices and taking pictures. And the first year I was down there, after I started writing that series, I rented one of their bikes, and I rode it back to my cottage on the bike trail and kind of got a sense for that. And the Indiana series, the Country Store Mysteries, I just love that part of the world. I was a graduate student there for 5 years, a few decades ago. I keep saying a few decades ago. Pretty soon I'm going to have to say 4 decades ago, or maybe already. Anyway, it's sort of a slower pace of life. It's southern Indiana. It's almost more Kentucky than Indiana. It's in the pretty hilly countryside, and I've made a couple trips there to kind of refresh myself on language and culture and food. And I have a sister who lives north of Indianapolis, and she'll come down and meet me, and we'll do a little sister research trip.
You know, I deliberately set my book, being a transplanted Yankee, though I've been here more than a few decades too.
Yeah.
I deliberately set my books in a small southern town because I knew small southern towns, and for cozy, I wanted a smaller environment. But I put it only 15 to 20 minutes out of Birmingham, so I could have a bigger setting to jump back and forth, to have foodie world, and to bring characters in, so it wouldn't be Cabot Cove for those of you who think of just a small setting. What about you guys? And then I'm going to ask about our careers, because we all changed a lot.
Yeah.
What about you? How did you pick your setting? Besides, like you said, Indiana, you knew. I picked the southern areas that I litigated in. Kelly?
Well, for this historical, it's set in London and then the English countryside in a made up town. As I said, it was inspired by Agatha Christie. And I ended up setting it in World War I. So Fiona Figg is based in London at the War Office, and she ends up out on assignment out at a country house. And the Jessica James suspense novels are set in Chicago. Jessica is a philosophy graduate student. Where I came from. And she, well, I guess it's a little more autobiographical, but I did not kill my thesis advisor, just to put that on record. But
You thought about it, I know.
We all did.
Right. So, so I visited London and English countryside many times, but mostly before I started writing the Fiona Figg, but primarily for philosophy conferences and stuff with my academic career. But given my inspiration for Fiona, she ended up working in London. In the second Fiona Figg novel that is coming out January 5th, it's set in Paris, and then the third will be set in Vienna. So she's going to end up traveling around too. So cool. That's a lot of fun for me.
Deborah, you're right though about having enlarging the scope of just the village, because we really do want to avoid that Cabot Cove syndrome where you never ever would want to go to that village because somebody's going to get murdered. You know, in the Country Store Mysteries, the university town of Bloomington is 15 miles away, and you know, sometimes professors will come into the country store restaurant, and you know that it does widen the scope a little bit. And Indianapolis is a big city, and it's not that far; it's an hour north. But I think that's a good idea. And in book 7 is called Nacho Average Murder. And my protagonist goes back to California for her 10th high school reunion. Yes, she's young. And where she's from Santa Barbara. So she goes back to Santa Barbara for her high school reunion and uncovers a secret about her mother's death, which she had thought was a natural death 3 years earlier. And but that was a really fun research trip, going to Santa Barbara in February, back when we could travel.
Well, you know, when I was writing Three Treats Too Many, listening to y'all, obviously, Kelly, you've stolen some of your philosophic work and your being a professor. I deliberately, in my books, kept everything separate in terms of my career. I was a lawyer, and even in my book, not in the series, but in my Should Have Played Poker, I made my protagonist a young lawyer. In my first book that got orphaned, I used the University of Michigan's campus and dealt with students. But in this series, I've stolen some things in that I have twins in the book. Sarah can't cook, let's put it this way, to be in the kitchen is more frightening for her than murder. But she has a twin sister who is a superb cook. Growing up, my sister and I were like that. My sister would cook, shadowed my mother and learned to cook beautifully. I would lie on the couch and watch Perry Mason. At the first commercial, I emptied the dishwasher. The second commercial, I set the table. The third commercial, I said hello to my dad as he came in. And at the end of the show, just as they rolled the credits, we went up for dinner. I am also the mother of twins, so I put the two together and gave her a twin sister who's a fantastic chef. That way I could put a few serious recipes in. But
I love that, Deborah.
Careers separate. What about you? Because Kelly's already commented on this, but what about you, Edith?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my first book and my third book, which were written under a pen name and came out with a very small press, but were reissued as Edith Maxwell books this summer. Speaking of Murder and Murder on the Bluffs, those feature a contemporary Quaker linguistics professor. And my doctorate is in linguistics, and I've been a Quaker for 31 years, 32. So that's a little bit of bringing my past careers, but otherwise, it's really, the only thing would be the midwife series, where I'm bringing in my past experience. But I wrote software manuals. I was a technical writer for many years, and I've written a short story. Yeah, I wrote a short story set in high tech. That was a fun one. I got laid off a job of 14 years. And so I wrote a short story of murderous revenge after layoff called Reduction in Force. And the manager gets it.
It's funny because I too write short stories, and Edith and I have been in this about the same amount of time now. I don't think any of us, that's the beauty of it, 3 writers here, I don't think any of us have been doing series more than not even kind of 10 years yet. Am I correct?
Right.
We all left well, you haven't left yet, but we've either left jobs or have juggled while we're writing.
Yeah.
I was still on the bench and trying to keep them separate when these books started coming out. It's only now that with 3 Treats Too Many that I'm off the bench, and I haven't thought about whether or not I could bring that into this world. It doesn't quite fit. What about you folks? I
bet you could make it fit, Deborah.
Oh, I'm sure I could. If
Maybe
I could get a motorcycle group in, I'm sure I could get the law in, but I do have a lawyer, Harlan Endicott, so I always have a legal end in the book, and she works for the law firm. But the idea of my books is to be fun. What about yours?
Right. Mine are totally fun. I mean, some of them are fun. The country store mysteries are. The voice came out funny. If I try to write funny, I'd be a complete fail at it. But they tend to, they're relatively lighter. They have social issues in them, but they're relatively lighter. Yeah. What about you, Kelly?
Yeah, same here. I do deal with some social issues, like the Jessica James. It's important to me to deal with women's issues, and of course with the Fiona Fig, there's World War I, so there's the war, and also she's a woman in 1917. But it's really important to me to make them fun and entertaining, and that's why I write them. Is they're fun to write, and they have a lot of humor. I find dealing with social issues with humor is, for me, the best way to handle some of the heavier stuff. So that even sometimes when I bring in some philosophy especially in the Jessica James, it's more like the butt of the joke. So more than philosophy light, it's kind of a philosophy joke. So I think that they're hopefully they're entertaining, kind of page turner entertaining books for fun, and more escape from.
When I started writing these, the type of book I love to read, because I traveled quite a bit in my job, in my writing, obviously, like Edith, was boring. It was briefs, it was decisions, it was very legal treatises. So these were the kind of books, the whodunits, that I could read a couple crossing the country and relax with. And that's what I liked, as opposed to a thriller or cruise suspense, even though I read everything. But like you two, I also have to work social issues in. But I think the big difference in the cozy is when we work them in, we don't beat people over the head. If I can subliminally make you think about an issue, I've done my job. In a way, I think sometimes the cozy is harder to write because you have no sex on the page, you have no blood on the page, you have the social issue, but you have to tuck it in just beautifully. And so it's, and the plot better be good or you're not going to have a good book, and the characters have to speak for themselves. So I know, at least in my Sarah Blair series, it's a toss up to make sure it does all that, but that the reader walks away knowing they had, as Edith started the day, a time away from the real world. And I've read yours. I mean, Fiona and her hats get to me every time. I'm always waiting to see what she's going to do next. And Edith, you know, I love your books.
Oh, nice hat.
Very good look.
Very nice. That's great. I'm afraid I haven't read your books yet, Kelly, so I'm gonna have to clearly get to them.
If you
One
like,
of the things we have is one of the attendees wants to know how we connected and how we connect with other authors in the similar genres. I've connected because I like you guys, but when we go through, how do we connect and how do we find other authors and such? It's a networking game to me.
Kelly, you want to start?
well, they're the mystery conventions, and I think we've met at conventions like Killer Nashville and BoucherCon, which was just last weekend, although virtually now, and Left Coast Crime and Crime Bake, and yeah, I think I've met a lot of people. That's how I've met other mystery writers, is at mystery writing conventions. And it actually was kind of funny. The first time I was going to one, I put on Facebook something like, who all's going to, I don't know if it was BoucherCon or whatever, let's get together and talk murder. And some of my philosophy friends saw it and were like, what? That's horrible. You know, I'm like, we're talking fictional murder. So I had to make a correction on the Facebook page. But that's how I've met. I mean, Edith, we haven't met in person before. I mean, I know your books, but Deborah, I've seen you at quite a few mystery conventions, and that's where I think
That's where we connected.
Where we first met, or maybe it was Malice. It might have been Malice Domestic. Anyway, I don't know. I've seen you at a lot of mystery.
Well, and I've done a lot of my meeting through Sisters in Crime. I joined organizations. I joined Sisters in Crime. I joined Mystery Writers of America, and I got involved. In Sisters in Crime, I joined the Guppies, which used to be the Great Unpublished, but really it's about 60-40 now because people evolve, but they don't leave. They help, they give a hand back, which is what helped me get going. People helped me. So a few years ago, I was president, and Edith now serves on that board. And on Mystery Writers of America, right now I've been on national boards of both, but I'm also on the national board of MWA now, and I'm president of the Southeast Mystery Writers of America chapter. I think that has been a wonderful way for me to both meet people in my genre and other genres, and to meet mentors who just became friends.
I completely agree. Sisters in Crime has totally been my path. I went to my first Crime Bake in, I think, 2006. And the New England Crime Bake, which is a conference really aimed at writers. So there's master classes, and you can pitch agents and meet editors. And I went to Crime Bake, and I hadn't joined Sisters in Crime, and I found out about it. And I went, why am I not a member of this organization? I didn't have any books published. I think I had maybe one short story pending, crime short story. And I met Deborah through Sisters in Crime. I met all kinds of fabulous mentors. You know, they helped me as I was coming up, and now I'm mentoring other people. I'm writing book blurbs for other people. I was president of the New England chapter of Sisters in Crime and co-chair of Crime Bake for 2 years. I'm a member of MWA as well. But the conferences, of course, Malice Domestic every year, and GotchaCon when I can get there. And I've been to Left Coast Crime a couple times, and I haven't been to Killer Nashville yet, but that's on my list when we can travel again.
Mm.
So, but really when beginning writers ask me, you know, what do you recommend? I have 2 recommendations. One is keep your butt in the chair and your fingers on the keyboard and write the best book you can write. You can't fix a book you haven't written, and you can't sell a book you haven't fixed and written. And the other is find your tribe. And for us, it's Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America, totally, especially Sisters in Crime and the Guppies.
And I think being realistic, Edith, what have you written in this last few years? 23 books? Am I getting my numbers right?
I have 24 in print, and I just finished writing my 27th, and I have 3 or 4 more under contract.
Yeah.
So I write 3 books a year. Yeah.
And I write about 1 book a year, and but I've had 40 some stories published in the same time period we've been talking about. And Kelly, I know you've written more books, because I've got 3 in the series. The 4th one just went in. It'll come out in May, and that's 4 Cuts Too Many, and then 5 Bells Too Many is where I have to put myself in the chair and start writing. Kelly, you've written a number with the 2 series plus the children's group. Where do you stand?
Yeah, I am right now writing Jessica James #6, and I have, as I said, Fiona Fig #2 is coming out in January, and so I have to get to work on Fiona Fig #3 in Vienna after I finish the Jessica James, and then I have 3 in the Pet Detective Mystery Series, the middle grade kids mysteries, and an activity book. So the 3rd and the activity book are in production now. I think they're going to be out. The publishers plans to have them out in November before the holidays. So I'm excited about that. So I guess I've been doing about 3 books a year too, but I still have my day job. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering how many I can write if I don't have another real full-time job at the same time. The kids' books are a little shorter, so they're more like writing maybe a 1/3 of a book, because
Novella or something. Yeah.
yeah. So they're a little bit shorter, but yeah, I'm planning. I have ideas for lots of other things I want to try writing. Probably I'm having so much fun with the Fiona Fig series. I want to keep writing that, and the Jessica James, I thought of stopping, and I killed off a few characters, and some readers got mad about that. And and now I'm really getting excited about a new character that I'm writing for the 6th one that I'm writing now. So yeah, as long as people like Jessica, I guess I'll keep writing Jessica and write at least 1 in both of those series a year. I don't think I'll write any more kids mysteries for now anyway. I have some other ideas. So
There's a few questions in the queue, so let me start bringing them up. Let's start first. For those of us who write both long and short, what do you find harder to write, books or short stories, and or something else like the kids' books? I know for me, a short story is an idea, and when it comes to me and it works, it just flows. But I have to narrow my scope of characters and plot lines in my short stories because I have to limit my word count. For those who aren't as familiar, flash fiction can be under 1,000. Short story can be 1,000 to maybe 10. A novella is going to be 20,000. If you get much more than that, you're writing a book. But I find when I write a book like 3 Treats, I have more plots. I can add subplots, and it gives me more fun to play with it. But the other just is so much fun when it works. Edith?
I love writing short stories because I can really do other things. I can go darker. I can make the narrator the bad guy, and it gets over with more quickly. And as Deborah said, I mean, you have to limit. You can only have really a couple, 2, 3, 4 characters. You can't have all these people who don't need to be named and because they don't need to be there. And I can, as you said, Deborah, the same thing happens to me when I get an idea for a short story. I'll go for one of my plotting walks, my exercise walks, where I talk out loud to myself, and I'll just like talk through the story and take notes on my phone, dictate notes on my phone, and then all I have to do is write it. It's like the skeleton's there. But a book is just a much bigger project. It's kind of more interesting, but it's, woo, you write like the first third of the book, and then you have to keep your arms around that third as you keep the next third moving without falling asleep or making your reader fall asleep. And then you get to the exciting ending third, but it's much more of a challenge, but it's also then kind of more of a feeling of accomplishment when you're done and you've fixed all the threads and put it all together and made it work. So they're both good. They're both hard in their own way. They're hard in different ways.
Let me take the next question to you first, Kelly. How long does it take each of us to write the books on average? And I'm going to tie in with Edith's answer when I get to mine. But Kelly, how long with you? Because you're writing different things, especially Fiona.
Yeah, it's, well, strangely, it's taking me longer and longer. I don't know if it's my day job. I don't know if it's COVID freak out, or I am learning how to write. Maybe that's it. I mean, you know, I only started writing fiction about 5 years ago. Before that, I wrote a lot of nonfiction. And I wrote articles and also books, nonfiction, and I always preferred writing the books, to go back to the last question. But I guess it takes me about, I write the first draft in maybe a couple of months, like 2 or 3 months to write a first draft, and then another 2 to 3 months to revise and edit and work with editors and get the thing back again and revise again and again and again. So I kind of write in layers, I guess. I write the first draft, and I know, unlike other authors that I've talked to where they end up writing a huge first draft and then they have to make it smaller, I tend to write a smaller first draft. My first draft might be 65,000 words, something like that. And I always have to expand it. I always end up expanding it. So then it ends up being 75, 80,000 words by the time I'm done. But it's, yeah, it's just a process of like combing it over and over to get the mats out and grooming it and shaving parts out completely, and just going through it again and again and writing different layers. And I used to, I mean, it's surprising in a way that it takes me longer, because I used to just try to write, when I started, I tried to just write the book. That it's doesn't really work for me anyway. I have to do it in layers. Once I allow myself to do it in layers, then I can write more efficiently. So for example, my books are very dialogue driven. And for me, writing dialogue is the easiest part. And I love writing dialogue. So I guess it's plot and dialogue in the first draft. And I have to actually force myself to go back and add the layers of descriptions. And also just change a lot of things. So it's that layering kind of process for me. And I guess altogether maybe 6-7 months to write. And that's writing every single day, or trying to write, sitting in front of the computer every day for most of the day when I don't have to, the half of the day that I'm not doing my other job.
Edith, what about you?
Well, I'm under contract for 3 books a year. So I can write a sparse first draft in under 2 months. And I haven't shaved that. I think the very fastest one I wrote was 6 weeks, but that's kind of extreme. And that's nothing interferes. Like, I don't get sick, I don't travel, I don't have family visiting. And then And then I have 2 more months to polish it and revise it and do all those layers. So my first drafts, because I was a tech writer, which is no fluff, are very sparse. And I go back in and I add the characters' reactions and I check all those research bits that I didn't stop and check while I was doing the first draft. And I bring in the senses and add description and make the mystery, the puzzle work. So I've been writing 3 books a year, which is 4 months a book for, I don't know. Well, since I left my day job, really 7 years ago. Yeah.
And I'm writing about, I guess it would be about a 6-month period. If you take, I give myself about 11 months, but I really take about 4 to 6 months on the book itself. But one of the things I've been working with is the evolution of the characters, because like when I started this series, I had Sarah married at 18, divorced at 28, and the only thing she got out of the marriage was Rah Rah the cat. So in the first book, she has kind of finding herself working as a receptionist. By the second book, she's evolving, and by 3 Treats Too Many, things are looking up so much that even the cat is looking at her differently. But it's also a key aspect for me to write if it's going to work, because like when I wrote the first book, and I'll ask you guys this, it was sailing for the first half, and then all of a sudden something happened and I went to write the second half and it wasn't working. I wrote the whole book, it was done, and I hated it. It wasn't going to go anywhere. I wasn't going to submit it anywhere. And then I kept trying to think, what am I doing wrong? And then it hit me. I have the wrong murderer. I wasn't listening to the characters. I was trying to push them to go a certain way. So I threw out half of a book and started, like that first half, I started over, and the last whole half of the book was rewritten. And once I did that, that book, came out in the first week. It was on Women's World as a book of the week. So, you have to get it to the right feel. I don't know if you've had that happen to you too, that, it just doesn't work within the time period you think it's going to work.
So far I haven't had that happen. Maybe I'm getting better at listening to my characters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a couple of times the muse or my imagination or my character has said, well, for example, I had a pregnant woman in the historical who was giving birth to twins, and they were coming early, and I thought, well, both of them are going to die. And I thought, I can't do that. I don't want to write that. I don't want to write 2 babies dying. So sometimes I say no to my characters or the muse or whatever it is. No, you can't do that. I'm not doing that. But most of the time, it's gone okay. I have had books where, because I don't plot extensively, I've set up 4 plausible suspects, and I'm 3/4 of the way through the book, and I tell myself, you have to pick one. You have to finish this book and pick one. Who's the bad guy? And then I have to just pick one. And it could have been any of them, and all I have to do is make it work. But that's a little different than throwing out half a book. I've thank goodness, have not thrown out half a book. Yeah. What about you, Kelly?
Well, I did end up writing the first Fiona Figg Betrayal at Ravenswood, I think 3 times. That's the only one that I have really rewritten characters and added characters, and just over and over again to get the right kind of feeling for Fiona. I have also, gotten, halfway through and who's the bad guy? Trying to, a lot of times trying to figure out how the plot is going to resolve itself. That I just have a general sense, but haven't gotten the nuts and bolts down and kind of fiddle around with that. But but I guess the only novel I've written that I actually really rewrote seriously plot points and characters was the Betrayal at Ravenswick, and still it went fast. I mean, that was a weird thing. All 3 of them, all 3 versions. I just love writing that character so much that she didn't really change, just the characters around her. So it went pretty fast. But luckily, I feel like I got in a groove with Fiona now, writing the second one. So I don't have to completely keep changing her world and the characters around her. I've got pretty set.
Speaking of her, one of the audience members wants to know, they think Fiona Fig is a wonderful name, and they want to know how we decide on character names. So Carolee, they picked on yours first. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. I've spent so much time and so little time on character names. It's weird. Like sometimes I will just be agonizing over a character name. Like I'll spend all day or weeks like trying to figure out a character name. And sometimes, a lot of times the character names change. And I sometimes forget that I've changed their names. Like some of them have evolved into all different kinds of characters' names. I mean, for example, for Jessica, I wanted her to be like 20. I think when I started, she was maybe 21. So what I did was I went back to what was the most popular girl's name 21 years ago, Jessica. I mean, I went through a lot of other ideas and that's how I ended up with, I couldn't decide. So that's how I ended up with Jessica. Fiona is a longer story. As I said, I was inspired by Agatha Christie. I've been watching all of the BBC Poirot mysteries, and I really love the Miss Lemon character. But I wished that she was the protagonist instead of Poirot. I mean, I wanted more women, protagonists. And to tell the truth, I don't really like Miss Marple. But I was, as I said, inspired by the lemon. So I started thinking, well, I didn't really want to have Miss Lime, or, I was like Miss Apple. And I wanted an English sounding name, Fiona, and I like alliteration, for better or worse. So I ended up with Fiona Fig.
That's a great name. That's a super name. I've had a lot of fun with my historical series, Haunting Graveyards, and coming up with great names. My characters, Rose Carroll and the midwife, her mentor is Orpha, O-R-P-H-A, that I found on a gravestone. And I also love that Social Security Administration names database, where you can go back to any decade, back to 1880, and find the 100 most popular names for girls and boys. That's a great. So you just go, 20 years before the character, however far back you need to go for those characters' names. But sometimes in terms of other characters, it has the shape. For me, the shape of the name has to fit the character. If it's too round of a name and it's an angular character, I don't know how to describe that really. I should be able to. I'm a writer, but I have to have the right feeling about the name. And I might get the right feeling, and then I realize I've got 4 male characters and their names all begin with R. Nope. Can't do it. So if my detective is already named, like I've been working on a new series set in 1920, which is just a dream. I don't even have a contract for it. And the detective, it's in California, Southern California, and the detective's last name is Ramirez. Well, I can't really have the possible villain's name be Roland and somebody else. Like I realized yesterday I have three names beginning with R. Male names.
Well, and I have to kid on this because I went with very simple names: Sarah, Emily, Jane. For some reason, the characters, even though when I started with fancier names, they came back to wholesome, old-fashioned, simple names because that wasn't what I wanted to Estelle. But when I got to their mother, who I'm making a Southern belle, the kind who could say "bless your heart," and nobody, and everybody accepts it while she's telling them, where to go. She's Maybelle. I mean, that just came. My biggest problem, though, I don't do the first letters the same. I have a tendency to pick S's at the end of last names, which is a problem, folks, when you're writing, because if you go to do a possessive, some people want S apostrophe, some want S apostrophe S, and I've had to go back and copy edit it. And the other thing is to think about the culture you're in. I picked a character to be an older gentleman who comes in book 2. Book 3, he was her former neighbor, and he's evolved again through the books. But I made his name George Rogers. But because I always was taught when you're talking about a more elderly person, you use Mr. Rogers. Well, I just had copy edits for 4 Cuts Too Many. And this woman, the copy editor had not seen, obviously, the other books, because, or at least the one he's prominent in. She goes, do you think maybe you should change the name? Mr. Rogers has a connotation. And I'm going, I don't think 4 books into it, I can.
No, right. But names are such an interesting, and we do spend a lot of time like on all those different aspects, cultural relevance, history, and.
Do you ever find the sub characters start taking over above your protagonist? That's what one of our readers wants to know.
Right.
What happens when you think you have your protagonist, but then 2 other characters take over?
They don't get to take over, but they can be, kind of sassy rock stars who butt their way into a bigger role than I had planned. They don't. I mean, I read 3 series, and the protagonist has said at the beginning, if they haven't taken over in book 1, they're not going to. But they can certainly become more prominent, and sometimes like a sidekick will become more prominent in one book and then maybe be on vacation the next book, and so they can come in and out a little bit, the secondary characters.
Kelly?
Yeah, actually the book I'm writing right now, the 6th Jessica James book called Cottonmouth, I have a character that is threatening to take over. I mean, obviously she can't take over since it's called Jessica James Mystery, but I am seriously considering a spin-off, making her the main character, because I'm enjoying writing her so much and I'm finding her so interesting as I write. So, and I guess with all of the series, I have a kind of ensemble cast. And so there's usually 2 or 3 characters that will reappear. And they have strong personalities. Yeah, I guess that's something I'm finding with the Jessica James writing. Jessica doesn't actually have as strong a personality as some of the quirky side characters. So I don't know if they take over, but they definitely add the spice to the novel.
Yeah.
And I think I find the same thing like Edith. I know my protagonist, Sarah Blair, is going to be there. I mean, what am I going to do? She's a woman who, when it comes down to cooking, her best dishes are floral paper plates. I mean, that's going to be prominent, and that's going to be in her recipes. But for balance, depending on the book, another character is going to play a prominent role, but she's still the one who's going to figure it out and solve everything in the end. But what I have found that has taken over is Rah-Rah and Fluffy. Mm-hmm. When they're on the page, with Rah-Rah being the cat and Fluffy being the dog, because as the first question, we were asked by Nicole, I don't have cats, but I did grow up with dogs. So when I wrote 2 Bites Too Many, I had to add a dog because that's what I really knew. For the cat, I had to go interview friends to make sure I got that right.
Yeah.
But now Rah-Rah and Fluffy, when they're on a page, they're predominant.
In my Cozy Capers book group mysteries, I didn't want to, so I'd had a cat in each of my series, and they're all completely based on our cats. Excuse me. So I decided to make Mac allergic to mammal pets, and so she has an African gray parrot. And she lives in a tiny house behind her bike shop, one of those tiny houses. And her parrot is named Belle, and Belle is quite a character. And in fact, she comes to the rescue in book 2. And Belle has become very fond of talking to Alexa and giving commands to Alexa, making shopping lists to Alexa when Mac is out of the house. So Mac finally realizes she has to turn off Alexa when she leaves for work. But people have told me they absolutely love the character of Belle. And I have a friend down the road who has an African gray parrot. I've never owned one, but she transcribes some of Jewel's, sayings for me. And I've watched videos and read books about parrots. So but that's been really fun to bring a different kind of pet sidekick into the books.
Did you guys hear about the African gray parrots in the UK in the safari park that
Oh, I
had
love that.
had to be isolated because they were swearing at and cursing. They'd learned to swear and curse and then laugh when they would curse at the.
One of the zookeepers said they're just like a bunch of blue collar old men in the pub, swearing and laughing at themselves. And somebody posted on social media, well, just put them in the pub then. Like, perfect.
Well, before we wrap up, there's two comical things besides that. Apparently, when you said Alexa 2 times, one of the readers, Alexa went off and started. So, Alexa, tell her to go buy our books. But let's talk about what we're working on now.
Donna, that's hilarious. I love that. And I don't even own an Alexa, so I had to ask friends who have them. You're like, is this plausible? Sorry.
Well, yeah. I think that's the beauty of it. All of us here tonight obviously had a book just come out. And I think that's the one that the bookstore has that they showed at the beginning. And it's part of a series that either a first book or 7th book or a 3rd book, whatever. What are you working on now? What's the project right now that you've got in your hand?
Well, I just finished this project that I don't have a contract for, and it features 2 unlikely lady PIs in 1920 Pasadena, California. And they're based on my 2 grandmothers who were very, very different people. And I decided to plunk them into a different life than the path their actual lives took. And I had a ball writing it. I finished the first draft and have a proposal out with my agent, and we'll see. But the next book I need to start writing is the 10th country store mystery, which takes place, starts during a fireworks exhibition in the summer with an assisted living group who's come to see the fireworks in the park. And murder ensues, and it'll be fun.
Kelly?
Well, I just finished recently the 2nd Fiona Fig. As I said, it's in production and it's coming out on January 5th. And I don't have the actual book because it's not out yet, but I have this. I don't know if you can see it. This is a picture of the 3 covers.
Nice.
The book that they have in the bookstore is the first one, plugging Betrayal at Ravenswick. And as I've mentioned several times, I'm right deep in the middle of Cottonmouth, the 6th Jessica James mystery, which takes her to Wyoming. And I'm having a lot of fun with that. So
great.
That's what
and I had 3 Treats Too Many come out a few weeks ago. And in that one, Sarah has gone from when she first had nothing in her life to now she's part owner of a restaurant because she owns the building that her sister and her sister's boyfriend have put the restaurant in. But they're having trouble in that book getting the restaurant open, but her nemesis, the bimbo who broke up her marriage, has successfully opened a restaurant across the way.
Yeah.
And I managed to put in vegan recipes and a few other things, like a motorcycle group. But I just finished the copy edits on 4 Cuts Too Many, which is the 4th Sarah Blair book, which will have to do with knife cuts and such. And that comes out in May of 21. And I am, as I said, about to start writing 5 Bells Too Many, which will be BELLES, because I had to get some Southern bells into this series. Nice. And so that'll be the 2022 book for the series. But I am having a ball with Sarah because she and her friends are fun.
Great. Can I just mention my group blog too? Mm-hmm. So I blog with the Wicked Authors and wickedauthors.com, and we're there every weekday. We have guests. Deborah's been a guest on the blog. Every Wednesday we have Wicked Wednesday, where we all blog on the same topic, and we have a lot of fun. And all the other authors, there's 6 of us, most write under. We all write more than one series, and some under more than one name. And encourage you to stop by. And I also blog every second of fourth Friday on mysteryloverskitchen.com with original recipes.
And I have visited that one as well with my Jello in a can recipe. But I write regularly under the Stiletto Gang.
Yes.
I write regularly for Book Lovers Bench, which is one that does giveaways constantly. And I also write for Writers Who Kill.
Right.
And then I have my own blog. It's Not Always a Mystery. So if you check out our websites, I think those are up there somewhere. If not, we can put them in the chat for you. That's a great way to find out where we're writing and where we're going to be, because a lot of us are doing appearances now.
Yes, I can even send out a follow-up email with all of the website information and social media handles and all of that. And thank you guys so much. This has been so entertaining. And I'm also always so impressed by the way authors, especially mystery authors, support each other. You know, there's obviously competition here, but what I see with bookstores and writers is you all choose to lift each other up and promote each other's work. And it's very refreshing these days. So we will do everything we can to continue to support you guys. And thanks everyone for being here. And don't let your Alexa order your books for you. You can go to novelmemphis.com to order, or if you're local here in Memphis, stop by. We've got a display of the books up right as you walk in the front door. And you can also go to novelmemphis.com to look at all of the other Edith Maxwell and, you know, all of the series that these ladies amazingly put out. It's a wonder to me, everything that you guys have done even before becoming writers. And now the way you guys are able to publish so much. And I love that, especially with the cozies as well, you're giving us all a gift of that escape from daily madness that we've all come to know, especially during COVID and all of that. So we hope that you continue to do it for a long time to come. Thank you again for being here. Love the hat.
Well, Nicole, thank you for having us tonight for Novel, because we really enjoyed it. I know when I was there in person, I loved your store. This was fun. And thank you to the readers, because we couldn't do this without you.
And it sounds like we've got some writers out there too. This was so helpful with so many writing tips as well.
Great questions from the in the chat and the Q&A. Really great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nicole, for having us. And Deborah, thank you, and Kelly for bringing us together, for including me.
Our pleasure.
Thank you all so much. And I hope we'll get to do this in person someday. Y'all take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Be well.